Thanks again for doing this.
Thanks for having me. It's unnerving.
Our guest today is a veteran feature, documentary, and commercial cinematographer who's shot for brands including Nike, Toyota, Driveway.com, and Citibank, and whose first feature film, Napoleon Dynamite, startled audiences at Sundance in 2004 and quickly hit theaters to become a national pop culture phenomenon. Munn, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me what it is you do for a living.
I am a cinematographer, sometimes referred to as a director of photography. And that means I'm behind the camera, working with the lighting and camera teams for feature films, commercials, documentaries.
How did you find your way into studying film?
I loved cameras as a kid and films. I mean, I would just watch movies all the time. Went to school as a pre-engineering major and got sidetracked by a film class that I took as an elective. It just flipped a switch where I thought, wait, I'm gonna try this. When I started working on some of my very first projects and I realized how much creative problem solving was involved with filmmaking, I was like, I love this. And this world and these people are who I want to be with.
What were the films when you were a kid?
I was raised on Fred Astaire and Bing Crosby musicals that my mom loved. My dad loved James Bond movies, 60s and 70s comedies from Disney, and my dad would take me to Clint Eastwood films on Saturdays when my mom wasn't looking. But I'd never seen like really serious cinema, you would say, until I got to college. And I was like, what? There's a whole nother layer of this?
Do you consider Napoleon Dynamite, like, was that your first big break?
Napoleon Dynamite was my first feature. I mean, it shouldn't have been that easy to break through, even though I'd been working for a while. And so it wasn't like just stumbling in. Jared Hess, who directed the film and co-wrote it with his wife. Jared and I had been friends for a while, and I'd gone to BYU Film School a little ahead of him. He'd come back and told me he'd shot the short film, and he shows me Peluca, which is the precursor, the seed of Napoleon is there, the characters of Napoleon and Pedro, even though they weren't quite named such yet. He showed me the film, it was hilarious, and told me he felt like this could be developed into his feature, and he was working on it. None of us expected this film to do this. I mean, you make a film, and you hope it's gonna have an audience, but you can't picture an audience this large. You shouldn't picture an audience this large. I think you should picture an audience because you have to be aware of them as you make something like this. But in a way, we're just making it for ourselves. It just takes on a life of its own. I remember Dave Letterman's like telling everybody you need to see it twice because the first time will be a bit weird and then you'll just laugh your head off the second time. And then you're answering the door and there's kids like trick-or-treating at your house dressed up like your characters and you're like, something's happened.
The look of Napoleon Dynamite, the look was really groundbreaking. The way you're using light, the way you're framing, and it seemed like every agency at the time was really trying to cop that Napoleon Dynamite look. What is that look? Can you describe what's going on there?
I think that look is a really spare look that became funny just because of what was inhabiting those frames. I'd like to think of it as a situation where the camera really served the characters and the concept of what the film would be.
Jeez.
I'm always a bit jealous by the cinematographers who live a life of beautiful shots. Since I live in comedy a lot, raw cinematic beauty is not usually the order of the day. For me, the thing that's drawing me in is often character and performance. And if I can't feel it, I'm gonna go on a shorter lens, I'm gonna go closer. And I'd rather pick a lens or two for an entire project, and I tend to move that around because perspective that you generate for the audience is incredibly important. Napoleon's kind of an obvious example because we used really wide angle short lenses there, and that meant we were often so close to talent that they're like acting into the matte box. I want to put the viewer right there, too close for comfort.
And what's the very first thing you're doing when you arrive? There's probably a million things going through your head. Is there like a process in those first few seconds?
There's just stages of preparation. Like when you do the tech scout, it is kind of like this reaction to the location, trying to figure out how we can get light to play in there, and the blocking for the characters, because it's how you're going to reveal the scene and the characters and how they're going to relate to one another. Where does the audience sit in this scene? Day of the shoot, you show up and it's about performance at that point. It really shouldn't be about camera. I should have my answers sorted out so that actors, directors, all the people involved with those decisions have time to find it. I'm just the audience at that point. If everything's going to plan, it's just enjoy the ride.
What do you love about shooting spots versus shooting features?
If you hang out with me a bit, you're gonna notice I got an attention span that's all over. I like the heavy lift of a feature. You're gonna shoot it completely out of order and things are just gonna go crazy and you're looking for that through line visually. Commercials rather, they offer you like this shorter time scale to kind of do that same thing. The super short time frames of 15 seconds and 30 seconds to get some ideas across, to get some entertainment across, some messaging. I still think that's a fun challenge.
Why do the things that we create in a frame, why do they need to look beautiful or interesting or take us out of this world?
When we buy a movie ticket or we turn on our TVs, we're entering into an agreement where like somebody had to care. That's the responsibility in these roles, is show them something interesting. And interesting isn't just like eye candy. We want to connect to people. We want to see ourselves. We want to see life and the kind of things that we hope for and are afraid of in these frames. That's kind of the responsibility.
Why is art essential to business?
It always sounds like it's going to be such a dramatic juxtaposition, and yet the people I've met at brands, most of them get it. When they get up and go to work, they're like seeking to have a connection, a relationship with the customer, and art is simply the key that unlocks that door. We're looking for ways to speak to an audience. When we say speak to an audience, I think we just want that connection. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or a fine artist to know that art is a really easy way to make that connection. I think that's it.